Hi there. Today we're going to talk about the distributive property. Here's what the distributive property says. To multiply a sum or difference, multiply each term within the parentheses by the term outside the parentheses. And here's an example to explain what I mean by that. This example says 3 times the quantity of 2x minus 4. Inside the parentheses is a difference. To multiply by 3, we're going to distribute the 3 towards each term. There's 2 terms inside the parentheses, right? There's 2x, and then there's negative 4. So first we do 3 times 2x. To multiply a variable term, you look at the coefficient 2, you multiply that by the number that you're distributing. So we're going to do 3 times 2 equals 6, and so that's 6x. The second term is negative. So 3 times negative 4, a positive times a negative equals a negative. It's negative 12. Then when we go to read the answer that we got, we would read it as 3x minus 12. So the difference between a minus 12 and a negative 12 is the context. Are you reading it with something in front of it or not? All right, so it's your turn to come up with a question to which this is the answer. Can you think of a question to which the answer is to multiply a sum or difference, multiply each term within the parentheses by the term outside the parentheses? And the question is, how do you use the distributive property? Okay, as we go through the series of examples to follow, feel free to pause, write down the example, and then attempt the problem. Then you can check your answer. Okay, so here's our first example for you to try. 5 times the quantity of 2x plus 3. Okay, you try it and I'll wait. Welcome back. To solve 5 times the quantity of 2x plus 3, we distribute the 5 times the 2x and then the 3. So 5 times 2x equals 10x. 5 times 3 equals 15. So the answer is 10x plus 15. These two expressions are equivalent. They're equal to each other. All right, next example. 4 times the quantity of 2x minus 3. Very similar to our first example. You try it. All right, so we're distributing 4 times 2 terms inside the parentheses. 4 times 2x equals 8x, and 4 times negative 3 equals negative 12. And we would read this 8x minus 12. Here's an unusual example. Actually, it will become quite usual, but for now it looks unusual because the thing outside the parentheses is just a minus sign. So for now, you can think of that as a negative 1. Okay, so when I first look at that, before I think of it as negative 1, to me that says the opposite of 7a minus 4. Well, finding the opposite of something is the same as multiplying it by negative 1. What you're going to find is that multiplying by a negative changes the sign of every term inside the parentheses. So a negative times a positive, it becomes negative 7a. And a negative times a negative, it becomes positive 4. So the answer is negative 7a plus 4. If you look back at the original, just distributing that negative sign on its own, we're just taking the opposite of every term. The opposite of 7a is negative 7a, and the opposite of negative 4 is plus 4. All right, just to show that it doesn't always have to be 2 terms inside the parentheses, here's a longer one. It works exactly the same way, and you can try this one on your own. Go ahead. So we're distributing the 5 times 3x, that's 15x. 5 times negative 7y is negative 35y. 5 times 4z, 20z. 5 times negative 9 is negative 45. Notice that when you multiply by a positive, every term keeps its sign. Positive 3x, positive 15x. Negative 7y, negative 35y. Positive 4z, positive 20z. negative 9, and negative 45. On the next example, we'll see that multiplying a long polynomial by a negative, it changes the sign of everything inside the parentheses. So feel free to try this one on your own. When we multiply by negative 3, everything's going to change its sign. So negative 3 times 3x equals negative 9x. Negative 3 times positive 4y equals negative 12y. Negative 3 times negative 7z equals positive 21z. And negative 3 times negative 2 equals positive 6. Okay, next example. This is an example where we're distributing from the right side instead of from the left. It works the same way thanks to the commutative property of multiplication. It doesn't matter whether you distribute from the front or from the back. So we're still doing 6 times 3x equals 18x, and 6 times 5 equals 30. And the answer, 18x plus 30.